Are we live? Are things going? Are things moving? Get any thumbs up there? This is our last go. I'm still laughing because of all the pre-shooting hijinks that go on here. But at any rate, this is my last go at the virtual show. I hope that you have had a chance to visit some of my other fellow artists who've been in on this adventure with me. It's been a real learning experience. I've met some new people, developed some new relationships, and I think I'm going to go this time around again with my format of this morning, where I show you my work, but more importantly, I'm going to let you see some of the things that you can't see when you go to a show. This is what you see when you come to a show and look at me and my work, and what you don't see is the behind the scenes studio, how it all happens, and I want to give you just a little bit of flavor for that. First of all, let me remind you that all of the work you see here and the work that I have sitting on tables ready for you if you want to look at it is available on my website in the store with dimensions and prices. If you want to contact me, my phone number, there it is. Message me, email me, whatever. Let's make this happen. First of all, just real briefly, there are three areas of my work, and I'll come back to these in just a minute. I have my element series, the rough carved, more primal looking pieces with these, the obelisks in the back. Then I have my wall pieces, the wall sculpture. And then the third area is the vessels and the trays. The vessels are the ones with the pointy ends, the more freeform. The trays are the squared ends. So when you go on the web store and I have vessels or trays, that's what I'm referring to. Now I'm going to take the baton from my camera person, and I am going to show you the other side of things here. So when you drop the curtain, here we are. This is my studio, and it's a bit of a mess, so forgive that, because having crammed this 10 by 10 booth into here has really thrown things off. I have packing blankets and materials and extra work all over the place. At any rate, walking into the back area, this is where I typically carve. This is where most of the work happens. I have this area in the back with my ventilation fan for my sanding, the dust, and also I do some chainsawing inside, so I don't want to become asphyxiated. You see I have this plastic sheet up here. That I drop down when I'm carving, so I refer to myself as the boy in the bubble. Because when I'm carving, these chips are flying around pretty seriously. I do all of my work with a series of grinding heads. So you can see I have some different carbide configurations, structured carbide, flap discs, little Lancelot chain type things, this Pro Carver 4. I like Arbortech tools, actually. They work very well. Oh, and I was also way into the personal protection equipment before it was a fad. I've got my N95 mask. As a matter of fact, I can't even get these anymore from my supplier. So if you have any of the 3M 8511s, let me know. I'd sure like another case of them. My face shield, my very fancy headwear. Any rate, the bench is where it happens right now. You can see when I talk about starting with thick pieces of wood, these I have covered up trying to keep them wet so they won't crack before I get them carved. There they are, ready to go. Hank the cow dog. Actually, Hank might make an appearance sometime today because he is in the office. Oh, this is a nice piece of equipment too. Here's a 750-pound lift table, because when I bring in the really large slabs of logs, they're tough to get around. I can use this to get up on the bench. I can use this to lift them up to my chainsaw, or my bandsaw, which is over here, looking at the back side of the bandsaw. And to cut the slabs out in the first place really begins as a logging operation. So I have an Alaska mill. I have a big chainsaw on this 54-inch bar, and that guide can adjust to, you know, I can cut slabs from 2 inches thick up to about 14 inches thick. And I have my smaller saw up here that usually has a 3-foot bar on it. That's where I trim some of the blanks. Going into the office, where I don't like to spend a lot of time, but particularly during these virtual times, I spent much more. Oh, and there's Hank the studio dog right there. He's secure to place. So I spent a lot more time in here lately than I would like. Oh, I can show you my commute to and from work. Sometimes when it's really cold outside, I run to work. Looking down below, you can see the bobcat, my trailer, some logs. Back behind the house, that's where the Otter Tail River is, behind and below. Let's see. I love keeping all of the lanyards from old shows. Just can't bear to throw them away. These are the memories. The other thing that I have in here, which is kind of a sad, but I think of them as dog lanyards from all the dogs I've ever loved, hanging on the wall. So let's not get yours hanging up there any too soon, buddy. No. We didn't talk that way. All right, so come back out here. I have snow on my solar panels. I have a solar powered studio where I have a net zero energy usage. But as you can, well, this doesn't mean anything to you, but the 2 lights mean that my panels are covered with snow and not producing any power. I have to take care of shoveling those off. Back here, I cover everything when it's wet, and so then I have to dry it. So I have this drying chamber, if you will, rack, that I stack the pieces in here, and I drop the tarp down, seal it up, turn on this household humidifier and a fan, circulate the air, and that pulls the moisture out of the pieces. So I get it down to in that 10 to 12% moisture range, and then I do my final sanding with abrasives. The final shaping and sanding is done with abrasives at that point. So over here, I don't think there's, we'll be over here in just a minute because I have another set over here, but there's not much to see other than chainsaw gas and diesel fuel and things like that. So I'm going to pass the magical stick back to my camera lady, and here we are back in the booth. So all of that has to happen before I get to a show. Well, it has to all get loaded in the van. Everything here gets loaded in the van, packed up, drive across the country, and then I see you in your city or wherever you are, and this is what you see. And so this is pretty much the spiel that I would give you if you were at a show. Let's start with the element series. As I said, these are the rough carved pieces. All of my work involves an element of contrast. So the wall pieces have the very warm wood, but then a steel background to which I've applied a patina and a blacksmith wax. Some nice contrast there to really pop the piece. The vessels and the trays, I have the die on the underside. And so it only made sense to me that I had an element of texture contrasting the very refined, smooth things that I have. So you have the very sensuous, flowing, smooth pieces, and then we move into a very coarse, rough, where I'm trying to create cracks. So it looks like it's been around a long time. Here's a Shushugi bond technique where I charred the piece, sanded the char off. This is referred to as the 5 elements: earth, water, wind, fire, the 5th element being the element of nothingness. An American elm arc over here. These can serve as terrific room dividers because they can be viewed from all sides with equal effect, but they also are terrific on a mantle or up against a wall where you can get some, you can imagine some really nice shadows coming through those. I sell them on a steel stand, get them up off the ground. The obelisks, the same thing. These are suggesting that they had some purpose, something mysterious. What were they for with these mortises? These again are on a steel stand with some staples. You can kind of choose the size or the side you would like to view because they're different from all sides, as is any three-dimensional object. And we go from a very coarse bottom, work the way up through some dyed elements, and then I finish the top off with a very refined, highly sanded top piece. I had a question earlier today about the stability of my work when it goes into like a very dry desert climate. And my response to that is, let me say for starters that I've shipped my work all over the world and I've never had a problem. And the reason I don't have a problem is when I carve my pieces, they're carved out of a single piece of wood. In other words, I don't glue up small pieces to get a large carving blank. I start with a large carving blank. And the only way to get a blank that big that isn't cracked is to have it still wet. Because as wood dries, a thick piece of wood like this, as it dries, it shrinks. And so if you have a really thick piece and the outside is drying and the inside is still wet, you get an imbalance and that tension causes the cracks. So what I do on the vessels and the trays is I get them thin enough in their rough form that the inside wood can keep up and maintain a bit of equilibrium with the outside layers. On the wall pieces, these are still too thick, and so all of the wall pieces are relief carved on the inside, so they're not as thick as they appear. So the point being, as these change humidity, change climates, the wood does move because it is a dynamic material, and yet it's moving as one piece, just moving back and forth, so it's not going to crack. The recess on the back of the wall piece also, you can see I'm hanging them by a hook right now, which is kind of a goofy way to go. When they're sold with a set of cleats. This is a bundle of 3 cleats. And these are a modified French cleat where I've just put a metal hanging flange on this. So the back just sits down on that, it holds it captive, it can't tip away from the wall. Very effective, easy to put them level on the wall. The larger pieces back here, these are referred to as the Sirens, the 3 Sirens. I do commission pieces 2 at a time, 1 at a time, but when I'm doing sets for the show, I carve a set of pieces. They are all carved out of a single log. So in other words, these 3 slabs that I began with were sequential slabs coming out of a single log. And so I'm able to maintain the color and the grain from piece to piece. They're also carved as a set where this edge always flows into the adjoining edge. And you can see it on the big pieces or the smaller pieces. If there's a bump here, there's going to be a bump here. So even if it isn't glaringly apparent to you at a subconscious level, there's a real flow from piece to piece. These are the 3 Sirens. They're abstractions of human form. You can see the hips, the waist, the shoulders. These are a box elder set. It's a set on the other side that we got a glimpse at earlier. It's a little easier to see the carving and the depth and the drama here where you have, much like you would in a home, the light coming in from a window, washing across the pieces, so you really get to see the shadows. Here you can see the sort of lumbar curve in the profile. Then as the light changes throughout the day, it's almost as though they're moving, they're dancing, because they change the appearance as the sun changes throughout the day. Let's go over to the other side, the other outside. Because over here, you can see where I've taken a set of squares and I've taken the whole set and just rotate it at 90 degrees so the carving still flows into the adjoining pieces, yet you can go vertically on a short wall. And again, you know, this is not the way they would look in a home. It would get it nice and tight to the wall. And you can space them, of course, any way you want. These are on stainless steel, brushed stainless. This is the only brushed stainless back I have right now. This back could go on the set on the inside if you wanted to swap the backs out. This is a 21-inch set. Those are 18. These are 21, a little bit bigger. And again, they flow from one piece to another. Those are cottonwood. These are box elder. Down below is a box elder tray. The trays are really great, and the vessels, because again, you get a different look from one side to the other if you're using it as a centerpiece, for instance. But you also get one look at it when you get that long line of sight in a room, and then as you get closer and you're on top of it, it just morphs into this top shape. The vessels and trays, it's a little bit counterintuitive. When I carve these, it appears as though I've taken a log and scooped it out like a dugout canoe. When actually, when I carve these, I'll cut a log in half, I'll put the sawed side down on the bench, so the bark is up on top. And on my website, if you go to my blogs and my more type tab, I have different blogs about how I've carved vessels and carved sets of sirens, and you can see more about that there. So I carved down through the log, so I go through the grain rings, the growth rings, so I get some nice grain pattern that way. Then I tip it over. I always carve 3 feet on the underside, so I have a tripod. Because as I mentioned earlier, the wood does move, and if it's on an uneven surface like a slate, it's never going to rock. Now you can see how this die, so I apply a die to really give it some lift, redefine the profile, but it also lets the grain show through. You can see the chatoyance from the top side telegraphing through. The chatoyance, that's a jewelry term for cat's eye. That's that sort of three-dimensional aspect that you see in wood grain oftentimes. So that's a vessel. Here's a big cottonwood tray. Again, some nice chatoyance in that. Box elder piece above here that also, they all have their own personalities. Isn't that beautiful? This piece on the back wall, it's sitting on a 6-foot shelf. So for reference, this, you know, if you have a 6-foot table, you would see this is a big piece. This really requires a lot of room. I'm going to bring a walnut tray out here just so you can see. Even though this piece doesn't have the length that this one does, because of the tray squared off ends, there's a lot more mass. So if you're thinking spaces in your home, bear in mind that a tray can carry a space, a comparable space, more easily than a vessel can. In other words, you can go either way, but with a vessel it almost becomes foreshortened a little bit. So that's the story that you would have gotten from me had you met me at a show, which many of you have. Again, all of the work that you see here and anything that I am doing currently is on the website, in the store. I have a store set up so you can purchase right off the website, but I will perform a transaction any way you're comfortable with. A lot of people are more comfortable talking to me, emailing me, whatever. I can do many things to get you together with a piece. In the meantime, I thank you for joining this experiment with us. See how it works out. And until I can see you again, for real, please be careful out there. and support local artists and small businesses, because it has been especially difficult on us. And we appreciate anything you can do. Thank you.